A man can lie, steal, and even kill, but as long as he hangs onto his pride, he's still a man. All a woman has to do is slip once, and she's a tramp. Must be a great comfort for you to be a man. I'm Eddie Webb.
And I'm Chris the Man Spivey.
And today we're going to talk about the seminal Western movie of the 50s, Johnny Guitar. Hello and welcome to another episode of Genreless, where Eddie watches another movie he knew nothing about beforehand and now has opinions about afterwards.
Can we just rename the whole podcast at this point?
Right. Eddie watches something he knew nothing about and then after has opinions about it. Yeah, it's pretty much the whole podcast right now.
If you want, we could go down that rabbit hole. I think have a litany of other things that you may not have ever seen or heard of.
Well, to be fair, I mean, even off mic, I'm also doing the same thing to you. Like, hey, have you checked this out? Have you looked at this? So it goes both ways.
I will not break off into singing Psych. I've heard it both ways this morning, Eddie. It is too early for even me to do that right now. And if you haven't seen Psych the musical, you should definitely watch it. And so much so that we may even cover Psych the series, but not the musical one day soon. Because
Right.
Psych is one of my favorite shows.
Speaking of musicals, I did accidentally find out that Johnny Guitar at one point in time was made into a musical. And I found this out because one of the things that I think we both do is, at least I try to do, is I try to find a meaty plot summary online, copy and paste that into a document, and then I edit and revise that as I watch whatever I'm watching. It's easier for me to work from an existing text.
For me, that's based on how much time I have. If I have time, Eddie can usually tell when I sit down and I write out the summaries versus when I find one and I plop it in and tweak it.
Right.
Because it could be the level of humor, or it could be the fact that I am an amazing writer. I am an atrocious editor.
Sure. I can agree with both points.
And Eddie can't help himself, but I want to edit just a little bit. It's like, no, we're not building a game. We're doing a podcast. That's not important. And even when we're podcasting, I see his little, I'll change this word. I'll change that word.
I know. It brings me joy. But no, for me, partially, it's also because my hearing loss, sometimes I can't hear a person's name correctly, or because sometimes I have to watch this in 2 or 3 chunks. And so it's been a couple of days I've forgotten who someone is or how it relates together. So having a existing text I can go back and reference is helpful for me. So I found that, pasted it in there. And then I noticed that the plot wasn't quite the same as the movie I was watching. It's like for a minute I had to check to make sure I was watching the right movie. And then at one point in time, the paragraph goes, and then they start singing the song, and I'm like, oh, fuck! I found the summary of the musical.
I didn't know that, but now it's super cool, and now I want to go track that musical down.
Right. But it tells you. To be fair, that did kind of slightly inform how I approach this because there is certainly a lot of. If it wasn't a stage production before it became a movie, it certainly feels like it was structured that way.
How so?
Well, I mean, maybe we'll go into it later in the movie, but for example, the first half an hour or so is all in one set, as an example.
Yeah.
And really, outside of a handful of shots, most of the movie is functionally on 3 sets.
But we'll probably go into how you're saying, but I would also think that's likely budgetary constraints, and that's one of the ways that you cut down on budgets.
Oh, possibly. I mean, that may be part of it too. That's why I said it feels like it, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like I'm also someone who has watched a lot of BBC historical series, and they're also usually very long. Yeah,
Eddie, inconceivable.
I'm the kind of person that would gladly watch I, Claudius as a random example.
I can't even go there with my friend. I'd watch it. I don't know if I'd use the word gladly in my sentence, though, but I would watch it.
I, Claudius is great, but it's also very clearly one set that's been moved around a couple of times at different camera angles, right? I mean, it's not. It's slightly better than that, but my point is that doesn't bother me. And also, since I've been watching more stage shows since I moved to London, right? I've also gotten better appreciation of that. So there's the whole thing as I was watching it, I definitely feel like there's a slight artifice to the movie. And so it's interesting when I started doing some research into it that I feel like I'm not the only one who had some inkling of this because apparently, according to Martin Scorsese of all fucking people, um,
Who loves this movie for
contemporary,
some reason?
right, right. As it's like I don't know why Martin Scorsese's talking about this movie of all things, but apparently he did, and said that American audiences in the '50s just didn't get this movie apparently.
Yeah.
So they either just noped out of the movie or they thought it was a comedy, which to their point, there are a couple times in the movie where I also wasn't entirely sure if it was a comedy or not. So I could kind of see maybe.
So it's funny you say that. I have never considered this movie a comedy. Now, I will admit, out of the many westerns I've seen, this is one. I think this is my third time ever watching this. I came
Right.
onto this movie a lot later for me. In fact, I know this movie more from the song Johnny Guitar, which I know from playing Fallout New
Fallout.
Vegas.
Right.
And then I discovered this movie and I was like, wow, this movie's phenomenal. Why haven't I seen this before? And then I watched it again sometime because I recommended it to someone. Like when I was doing Haunted West, I watched it again. And since then, this is the other time I've seen
Right. No, I mean I'm not saying it is a comedy, and certainly when you watch the whole thing, it's definitely
it.
not. But there are some bits where it's hard to tell early on. Um, but what's interesting is that European audiences love this movie.
Yeah.
Um, uh, uh, and because they didn't have the same relentless steeping in what were now, even by the '50s, becoming these kind of, we talked before, fossilized Western tropes. They weren't cleaving to that. So I didn't see a movie that was breaking against some concept of what a Western should be, but rather just, oh, this is a movie that happens set in the American West. Um, and
So
actually,
I
one
could
of the people,
part of likely one of the reasons for the at least in the US is that if there were women who were predominant in Western movies, a lot of those end up being musicals. And like Doris Day, I think, did
mm,
Calamity Jane in was it in the 40s or 50s? Anyway, Doris Day did one that was like a musical comedy. And then even if you go back to Destry Rides Again that we almost did, that was like in 39, that had Marlena Dietrich. She did singing in it, and it was more of a comedy with like Jimmy Stewart. And Jane Russell even did a Western, who Jane Russell was like a badass in the movie, but it's a comedy because I think it's like with Bob Hope. And then in
right,
the end, she ends up marrying Bob Hope, which is kind of like the trope a lot of the female characters in those movies that were their arcs. I went from like this tough, rough shooting person to being hitched to a guy, which made me like the stereotype of what is expected of who I'm supposed to be.
right, right,
And this movie said, fuck that.
right. I mean, there's a tiny bit at the end where maybe you can squint and see that ending, but it's very clear the movie really has no interest in going that direction.
Because in all those, they would start off wearing like pants and like everything else and guns, and they would end essentially in like wedding dresses or dresses is how they would
Oh,
end their
right, yeah, yeah,
stories.
yeah. No,
Like I
definitely.
mean, full on, like this is a stereotype you have to be, and this is the only thing the American people accept.
Right, right. Unless you are becoming acceptably feminized, you are not of value to the American psyche.
Yes. And minor spoiler, in this movie, we see that arc, and then we see it shiftly say no.
Right, right, exactly. Um, just as a note, apparently Jean-Luc Godard actually really loved the film and talked very highly of it in a French film magazine. So um, it's definitely a movie that is we talked you talked before about how there's this kind of pre reinvention of the westerns that's on the cusp. It's about to happen, right?
Yeah.
Culturally, and it's interesting that I know just from being a part of pop culture that Italy is very soon in our retrospective about to become very very important to the western, the so-called spaghetti westerns. But now I start to see a chain of why Europe became really involved in that is because if this movie didn't do well in the US but did really well in Europe, I could see Europe going, we want to make more movies like this,
Yeah.
and they went in their own direction.
So it is definitely a precursor to the revisionist westerns. And
Revisionist, thank you. I can think of the word. Mhm.
so if you had to like categorize this western, because I know that you said the Oxbow Incident was definitely kind of a noir western. Would this fall under noir also, or would it be? I think I've read some stuff in the past where they said this is a feminist western, and depending on which interpretation of it you want to roll with.
I mean, I could certainly see this being a feminist western, right? Like, one of the things that's kind of joke is the wrong word, misdirection perhaps, is that the movie is not actually about Johnny Guitar. Um, Johnny Guitar is just the guy who shakes things up, right? But the movie's called Johnny Guitar, and the movie's not. He's not actually the protagonist. Um, so that is certainly the interesting, right? Um, it's not noir. I mean, I think it's just a revenge story ultimately at the end of the day, right? It's structured more like a revenge tale. Something bad happens to someone, and then they ultimately things keep happening worse. So eventually, they manage to get revenge on the person who caused that, and that gives some level of catharsis.
Well, you say it's a revenge story, but what would be the bad thing that happened to someone that would institute the revenge?
Well, without going into the details of the film per se, it's like it, a lot of what happens. Okay, so Vienna is the
We
actual
we
protagonist of the movie. I argue.
we can pause on that if you want to get into the movie proper and just talk about the back stuff how we do. Even like, all right, so this movie itself even kind of like redefined what people wanted from a western, and it has even redefined how we approached our podcast this morning, which I
Sure,
find
yeah,
fascinating.
right. It's so okay. So let me take us back. The reason why I'm saying it's not war because I don't see necessarily a series of bad decisions that's happening. Rather, it's a character who is very firm in her beliefs and pretty much keeps doing what she says she's going to do from the very beginning. It's just no one wants to accept those decisions, which is why I do agree with the feminist point because it's about a woman going, "Hey, I want to do a thing," and the men around her going, "No, you can't do that."
Okay.
Um, but I could certainly see why audiences in the '50s are going, "What the hell is this movie?" I went to go see a western by a guy named Johnny Guitar, who turns out to be a gunslinger. Spoiler. Um, but it's not really a movie about Johnny Guitar being a cool gunslinger.
Well, think about the timeline we've gone through, though. Like, at
Sure,
least even for us, we went from Stagecoach, that has
right,
what is considered to be like one of the greatest westerns, to like the Oxbow Incident, which doesn't really give people what they wanted necessarily, but has a whole bunch of western tropes to it, to High Noon, that
right.
people were really thrown off by, to Johnny Guitar. Like, those
No,
aren't
absolutely.
stereotypical westerns in style, so I understand there'd be a gloat of westerns that came out, so it would be difficult to really. No, I take that back. I'm going to stop because I convinced myself of something that I didn't disagreed with. Never mind.
Well, I was going to say, like, in the context of this run, this fits very perfectly, right? We're seeing a very clear progression of a series of movies that are taking steps further away from a template that Stagecoach is in some way, shape, or form working within, right? Because when we talked about Stagecoach, we talked a lot about how this is ultimately actually a classic western, just happens to be in a moving community as opposed to a stable community, right? It's recontextualizing the tropes, but the tropes are all present. And in fact, that was part of our discussion. Was like actually there are more tropes here than it appears to be. So it is even more traditional than it would seem. And steadily, we've been moving further and further away from that. So in the progression of what we're doing, this is a very natural next step from High Noon, right? Because High Noon is here's the lone gunslinger who's hard as nails and solves its ground, and the movie's going, but that's why this is a bad thing. And then this movie's going, here's the hard gunslinger and why he doesn't matter, right? So it's a logical next step. I can again certainly see why American audiences would be like, no, but European audiences would be like, oh, that's cool, that's interesting.
Are you saying we Americans don't have refined taste, Eddie, that we can't, as a mass, enjoy things that push our
Uh,
expectations?
so on the one hand, what I'm saying is that having lived here a fair bit now, Europe seems to be really good at satirizing the U.S. in a way that the U.S. can't quite do to itself. But also, yes, I'm saying Americans have no taste, and ultimately we need to appreciate them.
Oh god. Do you, all right. So do you know why this movie's actually got made in the end?
No, I don't know.
Because originally, Joan Crawford and I think the director were supposed to make another movie, but that script didn't pass mustard, and she owned the right to this book to turn it into a movie, and that's when they decided to make this movie.
Okay, that makes some sense then, because weirdly, most of the information I got with making the movie was about some behind the scenes drama, because apparently there was a lot of it. Um, and Joan Crawford is kind of mentioned as being in the center of all that, but I understand if she had the rights, then she was that makes a little more sense, because she apparently wanted a couple of people for the role of Emma Small, but they were too expensive, and so they ended up with Mercedes Cambridge,
Yeah.
and apparently they did not like each other at all.
So the third choice, though, is fascinating because I think our third choice was going to be Claire Trevor, who was from Stagecoach,
Oh, interesting.
and like one of her top choices was Barbara Stanwyck, who is
Right.
I don't actually think we're covering any Barbara Stanwyck westerns, unfortunately. Like I really wanted to do one who was like 40 something or other, but that was in the 40s. It didn't work for the run. But Barbara
Mhm.
Stanwyck becomes a staple in westerns, who is like a rock star who wanted to do her own stunts, like even falling down
Oh, wow.
mountainsides, being dragged behind horses. Barbara Stanwyck.
Wow. That's awesome.
And she's in westerns for like 30, 40 years because she ends up in Big Valley in the 60s.
Wow. But yeah, apparently, Joan Crawford actually dated McCambridge's husband at one point. And because Crawford and the director were in the middle of an affair, McCambridge disliked that because she felt like Crawford was getting special treatments. Um, and then on top of all of that, McCambridge was in the middle of dealing with alcoholism. So she was a drunk on top of all of this. But apparently later on in life, she admitted that her alcoholism contributed to some of the problems that she had with Crawford. But apparently the heat that you're getting on screen between the two of them, not all acting.
So, for people that are curious where you might actually know McCambridge from, if not this seminal classic, she's also was the voice of Pazuzu in those movies.
Oh, okay. I didn't make the connection, but um,
Yeah.
certainly she was not the person I was like, who I know them from. I mean, there's one person that I immediately was like, oh my god, it's that person. But there's a couple of people who's like, I think I've seen them in other movies we've done in this run. So again, leading to your thing that there's a a a, a pool of actors that just always appear in westerns.
Yeah. Which is kind of fun itself because we get the same thing now though from mentioned before British television watching. You see a lot of that there, like
Right.
consistently.
And it's weird because American films have really fallen out of that. Now, unless the films are isolated, they will not be part of a franchise. They don't really reuse actors in that same way. And if someone's been in a superhero movie of one staple or another, they don't usually jump ship to another. Some people do, but it's pretty rare. Whereas you're right, here in the UK, it's extremely common to have people in just all sorts of things. And another example is comedians. Um, Panel shows are very big here, which are basically game shows, but they have comedians on them and there are no stakes. And you'll see the same group of comedians a lot once you start watching them. It's like, oh, I saw them
Yeah.
from Taskmaster. I saw them from Nevermind the Buzzcocks, whatever. And so the idea that people just go from job to job, it's actually a bit of a controversy right now, because that style is slightly under threat in the UK right now, and some people are concerned about that. It's like, this is an established part of how we make media, but America has largely moved away from it. But so then you're going back to seeing this model of like it's much more um, a case of we know this person. They're not, and the thing is that they're not being cast in the same role, right? It's like it'd be one thing if it was you always play the rugged gunslinger or whatever. That's not actually what's happening. They're wide diversity of roles. They're just always westerns for some reason.
Yeah. Of course,
So it's
it could also
interesting.
be the sheer number of westerns that were being produced for that amount of time, and there
Sure,
are only
right,
so
as you
many
said.
actors, so you keep recycling them at some point.
Right,
Versus
because
now, where
I mean,
there's fewer movies but more actors.
right, yeah. That's the thing. It's like movies now are being made like every few years, as opposed to several in a year. Um, so and you're right. Like a lot of movies were basically not only who was in California, but who was specifically living in the Hollywood suburb of LA. Versus now people are flying all over the world to go to shoot movies and whatnot. So there's a much wider pool in that regard too.
So I'm gonna I'm really curious now because when we started the Oxbow incident, which is something you hadn't seen before, you came in hot that you loved that movie.
Yeah,
I am not getting that same heat from you for Johnny Guitar, Eddie.
that's because I don't want to give you too much right away. I feel like I overplayed my hand the last couple reviews, so I'm kind of keeping it in reserve right now.
Okay, I was a little curious about that one. That's all I'm saying.
You will get my opinion from my cold dead hands or after an hour and a half of discussion, whichever comes first.
Didn't Was this movie successful? American audience didn't know what to expect. Did it make money? Was it a bomb? What's the dealio?
Honestly, I don't know. What it seems like, I don't have any actual financial numbers about how the movie did. It's surprisingly hard to find in the sense of my 15 seconds of searching did not find anything. So therefore, I stopped looking. Um, I'm sure if I dug around, I really could find it. But it does seem, from a critical standpoint, this is one of those movies that has definitely gained critical acclaim over time, but is still not considered to be, as I understand it, a quote unquote classic of the Western genre. It is now regarded as kind of a good film, but not like one of the best westerns, right? It's not a Stagecoach, it's not a High Noon, um, but apparently it's always had a bit of a European vogue, to the point where Europe is more likely to make nods and references to Johnny Guitar than Americans are more inclined to. I know one musician apparently named himself after Johnny Guitar in Europe, as an example.
Hmm.
He
I didn't
gave
know
himself a
that.
nickname
Typical.
Guitar, Johnny somebody, but he gave himself a nickname Guitar, so he's Johnny Guitar so and so.
Okay. I like I said, this is one that I knew not the least about. There's some others we're going to come up that I know next to nothing about. That'll be fun to figure out.
Right. So the other thing that was interesting is, again, we talked about this before, where as I'm watching these movies, I go, oh, that's where this kind of trope or reference comes from. Um, and I suspect, again, given how this became more popular outside of the U.S., um, it reminds me there is a minor character in the anime Trigun who is a musician that secretly is also a very powerful assassin. And I was like, oh, is that no Johnny Guitar reference? And it probably is because he carries a big instrument case that happens to have guns in it. But he also does actually play guitar. And I thought for some reason it was a Mexican cinema reference, but it may also be or it could be both, but it may also be a reference to this.
What if the God, I forgot what it was called. Was it Desperado? No, it wasn't Desperado. Maybe it was. Where the
Oh
guy had
yeah,
like his gun in the guitar case. Maybe that is a nod back to here, and Trigun could be a nod to Desperado that I want to say came out before Trigun.
yeah, that might be. Well, if I remember correctly, the manga would have been in the 90s too, so it would have been roughly contemporaneous. But entirely possible that given that's a character that comes a bit later in the run, that they may have seen Desperado and go, oh, I have to add this character in. I mean, that's pretty common cycle. So yeah, that may be it too. Um, it's references all the way down on some level, which is one of the fascinating things about the way we're structuring these talks is that uh, sometimes it's not as simple as just, oh, X is a nod to Y. It's like, no, X is a nod to Y is nod to Z, Z is a nod to double A goes to double B, all the way back to, something from the 17th century or whatever, like nods, references, homages, they all kind of nest and cluster. And that's why tropes and genres come from, is ultimately people keep building and building and building until eventually it's like, okay, it needs to be roughly in this shape. And so now we call it this, because things are now roughly in this shape. But as we're seeing through this, like the rough shape of Western has already just a wide diversity of actual stories inside of it.
And funnily enough, some people don't even still consider this a Western at all. Like, some people just
Really?
consider it just a straight up melodrama with like a set in the West. And so it is weird to see people try to make such distinctive cut offs for what a Western is and isn't. Given that this movie like oozes Western that has melodrama to it. It's a blending of the two, and they don't want to acknowledge it like that. They just want to separate it out. And part
Right.
of me believes it's because it has strong female leads, and that's not what they
Sure.
want to associate with.
Um, it reminds me of how inevitably every few years someone tries to come up with here's the definition of what a tabletop role playing game is, and inevitably within 5 minutes someone's able to find so this thing's no longer not a role playing game because it doesn't fall in this criteria, right? Like what happened is a bunch of games got lumped together, and we as a society got those are all role playing games, but we can't define why that is. And I think the same thing here. It's like culturally, America decided all of these movies are westerns, and so when something doesn't feel right for vibes reasons, it's decided to not be a western. But like, which part of this movie is not a western, right? Because like, is it a guy comes into town who's an outsider of the town, and justice is comes from his actions? Well, that's this fucking movie. Is it because it's set in the American West? Obviously, that's the case. Is it because it's a movie that's strongly motivated by the conflict between law and justice? Well, this movie definitely addresses that. Um,
We
I mean,
straight up
like,
have a gun. We have a gunslingers duel in this movie.
right?
Like
Yeah, right.
it's all there.
Right. The thing is that the actions of the outsider don't directly result in the justice. The gunslinging duel between two women. I mean, like, it's not the tropes, it's the trappings, which then brings up, like you said, uncomfortable questions of like, so really what you're saying is you don't consider this Western because there's a strong female lead, which goes into uh, not only the inherent anti-feminist stance of Westerns as a quote unquote concept, but also why a movie like this needs to exist.
And another thing that some people, so I don't know about this one, but there's been a lot of talk. There's also like this strong sexual subtext that both Vienna and Emma are in love with each other and can't quite express that given the time that was made, time the film was made. And there's a lot of coded language embedded in the film that sort of reinforces that.
Uh, I didn't get that when I first watched it, but it certainly explains one of the, I won't say concerns, but one of the things I noted as I was watching the movie. Because again, I'm not giving you anything right now.
I know. So if you want, we could go into the movie proper. We could keep riffing on the backstory of the movie.
No, because I think this is one of those movies that because it's not this kind of landmark movie, we've already kind of talked a bit about the movie, so let's just kind of dive in so we can get to some questions, including many questions about like, is this a noir or not? So we start with a stranger with a guitar rides through town, witnessing an exploding mountain swarming with construction people, as well as a stagecoach robbery. Ignoring both of these, he rides into a small town, pushes through the swinging doors of Vienna's saloon, which is also a casino, and says he's Johnny Guitar and asks for the boss. Learning that she's busy, he goes to the kitchen for something to eat. Vienna, the owner of the saloon, who hopes that her lackluster business will soon boom with the coming of the railroad, talks to the employees of her empty saloon before returning to her dinner with Mr. Andrews, the man who's actually building the railroad. The sound of horses announces the arrival of Emma Small, who owns half the town and who is a long-standing rivalry with Vienna, fueled mostly by Emma fighting to get the railroad out of town and off of her lands. Emma is followed in the saloon by MacGyvers, who owns the other half of town, and Jenks carrying the dead body of Len, Emma's brother. It turns out Len was killed during a stagecoach robbery that Johnny witnessed, and Emma's convinced the dirty deed was done by the dancing kid and his men who are Vienna's friends. So we'll stop there, because again, much like most of the westerns we've seen so far, a lot happens at the start.
Got to set the stage.
Right. Um, One of the things that was interesting to me was again, I went into this with no knowledge of what the movie was about. And to your credit, you're like, don't watch the trailer, nothing, just watch it cold. And so I did. But immediately I was struck by the fact that Johnny is surprisingly passive for the kind of character he's portrayed as, because he sees a stagecoach robbery, he sees the construction happening on, and just ignores it, and very visibly watches it. We see a beat of him watching both of these incidents, and then rides on. So it's like
Did you think
he's
he was a New
not going
Yorker?
to New York City. That's a
Because
reference
that's
to
like
a
the big
commercial.
thing in the old jokes where people in New York just watch something happen and then go about their day. Like, oh,
Right,
well, that sucks.
right. Yeah, it's like for you, buddy. But no, like the guy comes down to town, he sees injustice, he's gonna ride in and stop it, and Johnny Guitar doesn't. So like immediately, I'm like, this is not the protagonist that the movie title is literally telling me he is. Right? It's called Johnny Guitar. I see a guy with a guitar. Obviously, that's probably Johnny Guitar, but he's not doing the things you expect a typical traditional Western protagonist to do. So already I was intrigued. I'm like, okay, something's up. This is pretty cool. And again, like because of media literacy, the fact that the owner of the bars is she's not a huge surprise, because like Joan Crawford's like the biggest name in the credits,
Yeah.
and so like it's Joan Crawford coming down the stairs. I'm like, okay, that's it. I wasn't surprised by that. It's like, of course, it's going to be Joan Crawford's the center.
What about like the start when Johnny goes in and the guy behind the bar says, "People like a tall fella." Like, boom! Like out of nowhere, that's it's like what?
Right, right. Which is interesting because I thought what was kind of happening was they're sexualizing Johnny pretty fast in a 1950s coded movie language way, right? There's
Yeah.
lots of talks about his looks. Vienna calls him a pretty boy at one point in time. He doesn't refute any of this, and so where I thought the movie was going at this point in time was just straight role reversal, right? Like John's going to be the person that needs to be protected and cared for, and Vienna's going to be because there's a reference to her being a gunslinger actually at this early point in the movie. And so like, is this just straight up role reversal, right? Is it just she's going to play the role that men usually play in these movies, and John's going to play the role that women usually play in these movies? That's not how it goes. It's actually more complicated than that and much more interesting than that. But at first, I was like, okay, so he's the girl that needs to be saved. That's interesting.
No, like I loved that play on it, even the very start with him coming in and all the interaction. And the fact that Vienna, one of her first things that we hear is for her, like, have her employed to like spin the wheel because she likes the sound of the wheel,
Right.
which is a reoccurring beat throughout different parts of the movie.
Yes. Right. Um, and actually, this is another point where I started thinking about the artifice of the movie, because you're right. Like, she's like, spin the wheel. She's like, nobody here, boss. She's like, I like the sound of it. Um, which I know because I know too much about how movies are made. Um, was probably a bit of a show off thing, because it's the either they have mic'd the stage really well so they actually got the audio of the wheel playing while they were talking, or they had advanced sound editing technology that could splice it in a way that did not eradicate the dialogue. Because a lot of times with those added in sound effects, they're kind of either very clearly added in, or everyone else has to stop talking while the sound effects going on because they can't do both. So I thought may have been a bit of technical showing off a little bit, right? Look
Okay.
at this cool thing we can do, right? But also it's a strong audio way of establishing the emptiness of the saloon
Yeah.
in a way that, because movies are so visual, here's another sense to show you that this is a slightly artificial construct. And then another point where one of her employees talks. Johnny goes into the kitchen while he's waiting for the boss to come downstairs, and so one of the employees talks through the hole in the kitchen door to talk to the other employee inside. And briefly, he's talking directly to the camera, like he's talking to the audience. And it cuts away, and you see, no, it's just two employees talking to each other. And so it's another moment of like, we're not aware that we're in a movie, but we want you to be super clear that we're in a movie. So I was like, okay, there's something here.
I remember reading one review of the movie from like a while back when I first saw it that talked about how there are no real characters in the film themselves. They're just like archetypes of who characters should be. Is that what you get from the film?
Not as a whole, but at this stage, I was kind of getting that vibe, right? It's like, uh, but I think what at this point, I was the complexity was kind of going for was these are all broad archetypes, but we're going to mix up who and how we're going to have playing them. Again, that gets amplified the next scene we're about to talk about, but it then goes away as the movie progresses. Because minor spoiler for 30 seconds from now, when the kid shows up and his gang shows up, they're also played very broadly. Um, but the characters do get complex as the movie goes along, but right now we don't see that, right? And again, like Johnny comes into town, and so it's like most of these movies you've seen, when someone comes to town, they have a problem, or they're on the run, or they're the marshal, or whatever. There's some kind of combat coded reason or drama coded reason why they're in town. And the way Johnny is shot, he's a stoic man looking out on all these horrible things happening, and he comes in and he's like, "Where's the boss?" You know, and so he's throwing his weight around, and he's just a fucking bard, man. He's just like, "I'm here to play guitar." It's like you're the fucking music act to an empty saloon, right? It's like it's just a shit job. It's a guy coming to do a shit job who needs some money. And so again, it's like it's so I feel again, my gut right here was, is this going to be a deconstruction of like, let's take these broad archetypes and then undercut how stupid these archetypes actually are. Again, it doesn't go there. It doesn't take very long. But another point, it's right around here, where I thought maybe, is this a comedy, which would, deconstruction. Kind of all comedies are ultimately deconstruction on some level. Because there's one point where he goes into the, "Hey, where's the boss?" It's like, "She's not here." It's like, "Go in the kitchen and wait." And you hear this kind of wah 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 music for a second.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the fuck is that about? Right? It's like, what was funny about that moment? Nothing was funny about that moment. And so I'm like, so again, like, I don't know what to make of this movie yet, actually. Which again, I can see why American audiences are like, what is going on with this movie? Um, but again, it changes right around the point that Dancing Kid comes in. So
I love the fact that they could hear all the horses from the mob when they're coming up. Like you hear all the commotion, and Vinny even kind of says like, "Get ready for guest." Like she knows
right,
something happens and it's not going to be good, but doesn't necessarily know what it is yet. Like that's a nice beat for her, showing like her presence of mind for the town and the community and everything else that she's a part of.
right, and also again, a subtle reference to, this place is so empty I can even hear the horses coming up outside. Right. Um, so the picture I'm having of Vienna at this moment is someone who is deeply aware of the business problems she has, but is also very intelligent. Like, she is seeing a future for herself that nobody else sees because she's hired a musician, right? She knows at some point in the near future, I'm going to have people where having a musician is going to help my business even further. So she's, in a very literal sense, a futurist, right? It's like, I know
Yes.
where I can see where my business is going to go. Nobody else can see it yet.
And we get that reinforced by the railroad guy that she's having dinner with, who says, "How did you know about like the railroad coming through here?" And
Right,
then it's implied that she had favors with someone, because it's never specifically
right,
stated, but it's constantly implied throughout the film that, amongst other things, she did that. So she has that knowledge now, and she used it to buy this property because she knew that it was coming. Because that's the thing is, how much is this place going to be worth when the rail comes through? And he makes some
right,
reference to some other big town. So like
right.
money.
Yeah, and I have more thoughts about how Vienna is perceived sexually in a minute, because it matters more when Emma comes into play. But for the moment, you're right. It's just kind of lightly implied that she may have some of this information because she's used her sexual wiles as a tool to get her business to where it needs to be.
And since this happens before the dancing kids bit, when the mob shows up and they try to like harass her, the fact that so I guess for me, the way I knew this was never going to be a real comedy is a line where she says like, "Down there I saw like whiskey and gambling, up here the only thing you're going to get is a bullet." Like bam, like hands down, that is our gunslingery line. Like that's our gunfighter line. And she's dropped it on the table at the start with a gun drawn.
Right, right. Hmm. Yeah. Um, and the other thing that is interesting about the movie is later on we get some exposition, but there's really not a lot at the start. It just kind of throws you in the middle of things and leaves you to piece things together, right? Like we see the mountain explode, and we see people obviously construction happening. And then when she has the dinner with Mr. Andrews, he mentions a railroad. And it took me to kind of go, oh, so that's why they're blowing up the mountain is the railroads coming in. And later that actually becomes a motif
Yeah.
of the explosions. But it's very lightly touched here. And then Emma's like, hey, my brother was shot dead during a stagecoach robbery. He's like, oh, we saw that stagecoach robbery, right? Um, so but who Emma is, who Len is, who the dancing kid is, it's just, all the stuff just thrown out there, and we as the audience are like, who in the fuck are these people? But that's not what's it's not, to your point about is this noir? It certainly has noirish trend of the conversations are happening on a different level from what's actually being said. That's certainly
Yes.
happening at this point here. Um, the conversation that we're hearing and the conversations actually happening are distant from each other. Um, so there's certainly that going on. But also, it's just straight up in media res, right? It's just like the story's already happened. You're arriving in the middle of it. And so it's surprising that a Western movie in the 50s is that confident of like, yeah, you'll follow, you'll catch up.
Which is my favorite way of having stories open. Like I
Yeah,
love trying to catch up with everything going on because it makes you an active participant in the film from the start.
right. But what's I find fascinating, I didn't catch it at the moment, but it's something I'm reflecting on, I noticed, is that a lot of times in media res works because uh, people are familiar with the tropes and archetypes of the movie, and then so they can roughly follow along, and then the movie will fill in the gaps, and maybe over time subvert them, but ultimately it's like this guy's a good guy, this guy's a bad guy, whatever. You can kind of roughly follow along until you get the details. But the movie's not doing that. The movie's showing you archetypes and then immediately going, this isn't actually what's going on. Now, again, the gunslinger coming down is not actually the gunslinger coming down, except it turns out later he actually is a gunslinger coming into town, right? The owner of the bar is a woman, but she's the one who has a gunslinger. So it's like, okay, so that guy's not the gunslinger, but and she is the gunslinger. Okay, cool. But then it gets, so it's not just things aren't what you seem, but like, no, things actually are what you see, but not for the reasons you think they are. So there's actually movies doing a lot of shifting back and forth in a surprisingly elegant way. So
Did you already notice from the jump here with Emma and the mob with her, when she moves, they seem to move in unison with her. Like even from the start of that scene, they're with her. And she may ask MacGyver's a question, he'll like reinforce her thing, but her movements reinforce what they do next.
I didn't notice that. That's actually a good point. And now that you say that, I think retroactively, I think I did notice that, but it consciously aware of it. It was a subconscious thing. But I did notice um, MacGyver's like, oh yeah, he owns their town, but like it was very clear that he was on some way Emma's lapdog. Um, and so at this point, I was like, okay, I suspect what's going on here is that two women are actually in control of this town, which turns out that thread was actually correct. Um, but like how I didn't know how much the movie was going to play with that space, right? Because certainly it's MacGyver's the other half of town, but I own MacGyver's, so I actually own the whole town.
Well, later when we find out like she owns the bank, like minor spoiler,
Right,
you pretty much own the town if you own the bank.
right. The movie eventually, again chips away at that, but we'll get there. Is there anything else about this first chunk of the movie you want to talk about?
No, because we're gonna hit it in a second with the kid and his group.
Right, because it's a short bit, but actually a lot happens. So the kid shows up, and Johnny re-enters from the kitchen, and we learn that he's been hired by Vienna to play guitar at a saloon. We talked about that a little bit already. The kid and Johnny exchange tense pleasantries, and Johnny admits he saw the robbery, but couldn't get any detail. MacGyver's loses his shit and gives them both 24 hours to get out of town. Um, so that's so it sounds short, but because what happened, this chunk is just a lot of conversations. And again, a lot of from a plot perspective, not much happens. From a character perspective, a whole lot happens in this chunk.
Yeah. To
Um,
start off though, Ernest Borgnine, right
Ernest
there.
fucking Borgnine.
And this is before he became like Ernest Borgnine, because like I think Marty in 1955 is what really propelled the rest of his career. Which I don't know if
Right.
you've seen Marty.
No, but I've heard about it.
It's a really good movie. We might cover it someday then. But yeah, right here.
Yeah, it was much like my oh my god, that's Harry Morgan. It's like, oh my god, that's Ernest Borgnine, right? And it's like, yes, I know these actors had to start somewhere, and it's like, and of course, as we talked about, if they start somewhere and if it's remotely action or drama oriented, it's going to be a western, but it still is a neat surprise. Like, oh, I know that guy, right? So that was the holy shit. Um, yes, he's playing Bart. Although in this chunk, he actually isn't doing a whole lot. It was kind of just that, oh, he's facing the crowd. Bart becomes more important in a minute here.
Oh my god.
Uh,
I'm I just holy crap. I just now I'm curious if in Blazing Saddles, Bad Bart is a riff on Bart from this movie.
oh, maybe, yeah. You know what? It might be.
Because I know that Mission Destiny Rides Again, the Marlene Dietrich's character is I forgot Madeline Kahn's character in Blazing Saddles is a riff on that from Mel Brooks. Sorry, whole other Western deconstruction in the 70s that we're
Yes.
not talking about yet.
Yeah.
Destiny Rides Again.
The more I watch and understand about Mel Brooks' works, the more it's like, oh, he's way more media savvy than even I realized when I was watching them. But again, like there's these wonderful moments of just undermining what you expect to happen in a traditional western, right? Because the kid shows up and he's every typical bandit leader, right? He's throwing his weight around, fucking people. But the fact is that we established that Vienna and him are friends. Like, that's odd. Okay, she's friends with the guy who's obviously the bandit leader. Okay, and then
So,
Johnny
all
comes
right,
out
you're
and he has
calling
the
him a
most
bandit
adorable.
leader, though.
Talking about broad archetypes, as far as we know at this point in the
Okay,
movie, right?
okay.
I know he's not, but that's from what little information I have at this point in time. He's positioned to be the guy in charge of the bad guys in town.
Okay. Agreed. Outlaw. Gotcha. Cool, cool, cool.
Right.
Cool, cool, cool,
Outlaw.
cool.
Maybe bandit, maybe the wrong answer. Outlaw's more accurate, right? He's the outlaw leader. And Vienna's friends with him because of what Emma's accusation is, right? And so Johnny comes out to see what the fuck is, and he has the most adorable teacup he's drinking from. It's this like little teacup with like blue filigree on it. It is so cute, and he just walks bold as brass into this thing, going, "Hey, I'm the guy who plays guitar," with this tiny little teacup. I'm like, what is happening in this movie right now? I love it, but what is going on?
And then he de-escalates everything.
Yes, he does. Instead of because the kid is clearly, I mentioned tense pleasantries. The kid's trying to get him to do something, and Johnny is just not taking the bait. He's like, I just play guitar.
I'm not talking about there yet. I'm talking about he de-escalates between the mob and the kids' gang. Because
Oh,
there's like that rising tension between the group of them first. And
oh, right.
then Johnny comes in and like so much so that there's this glass thing that's spinning around the bar that's going to fall and make a gun sound, and there's going to be a draw off. And the kid catches it. Sorry, Johnny catches it and puts it back on. Then goes from like the outlaws asking for something with his little teacup over to like the mob asking for something else with his little teacup to
Right.
lower the temperature of the room, which is
You're right. That's a good point. I hadn't thought about.
not what you'd expect from a gunfighter. Like that's
Right.
not.
You expect them to start pointing guns at people or threatening them, and he's just basically like, yeah, I'm just a simple guitar player. Explain to me what's going on. And again, what's interesting is that we start to get inklings that Vienna and Johnny had a previous relationship of some kind. And also, the kid and Johnny kind of know each other. The kid starts making vague references as if Johnny were a gunslinger, which again, we're starting to realize maybe he's not, but the kid's still acting as if he is.
So I
And
took
Johnny's
it
like, I'm sorry.
as toxic masculinity from the kid, because Vienna has called in this dude to supposedly play guitar, but she may be doing something else with this dude, and he considers Vienna to be his woman.
And so, like, when I was first watching the movie, I thought the same thing, right? It's like, okay, the kid's just an asshole. And he's just like, there's another man in my territory, right? And that was my first instinct as well. Later in the movie, we find out that something he has suspected is true. And so that point back to this part of the movie where it's like, he does think he knows who Johnny is. Johnny's saying that's not. Turns out the kid is correct. We don't know that as the audience yet. So again, what the movie's going is like, this outlaw is just being an asshole and throwing his weight around and being violent, and our protagonist, apparently, because the movie says he's our protagonist, is telling him is actually removing the violence from the equation by saying, I'm not a gunslinger. And then the movie's also saying Vienna's the one who's literally wearing a gun right now.
And is
other
drawn
people
down
have-
on people.
And has drawn down on people, and people have called her a gunslinger. So it's like, as far as we know, the kid's rage is misplaced. But again, twice Emma has said the kid is your friend. So it's like, it's already painting a much more complicated picture than the first 15 minutes of the movie would have told us.
And what do you think of the marshal that is there, but very much being told what to do? It seems to lack a lot of courage. It's just going along with the mob.
Well, that's something else. At this point in the movie, I had noticed that this is more of our run analysis. But like, the idea of frontier justice has been an ongoing thread so far.
Yeah.
Stagecoach very lightly touched on it. Ultimately, was like, Taker's like, yes, no, law and order is the status quo and it will be reinforced, and frontier justice is a blip on the radar. And then that idealized status quo gets steadily removed through each movie we've seen. To this point in time, the sheriff is probably just there to rubber stamp whatever Emma wants to do. Is very much the vibe at this point in the movie.
And since before we really get into the kid and Johnny's dynamic, we have to get rid of the mob first. And so then we get like the mob essentially breaks down. He like hurls a bottle against the wall of whiskey, and then says you got 24 hours because that's when we learned that Vienna is in fact outside of town, not in town. And so they already have another casino and everything in town, and says you can't like do booze or gambling out here anymore. It's like her 24-hour marker. And everyone else just the kid and his gang need to get the fuck out of town. And it's MacGyver's that does that, not the marshal, if I remember right.
Right. It is MacGyver's that makes the ultimatum, yes. She appeals to the marshal briefly, and he's like, no, it's Mr. MacGyver's city. You have to do what he says. Right. But again, it was very clear that Emma came in because she was very visibly like, you need to get out of town. And then all the other shit happened, and then all the men started to find ways to explain this shit that Emma just very clearly stated at the front.
Yeah.
The other thing is that I didn't talk about Emma in the last half because it's more relevant in this chunk. Because at first, again, we don't have context. We don't know how tied Vienna is to the murder of Emma's brother, right? And so it's a lot of her shrillness could be passed off as grief or anger or frustration or whatever, right? For all we know, her valid. By this point in the movie, it's incredibly clear that Emma is just angry at Vienna specifically.
Yeah.
And twice at this point in the movie, she thrown the word tramp at Vienna. So again, reinforcing she probably got some of her information through sexual favors. But also, the thing that popped into my head as I watched this movie, and I actually wrote it down, was the idea of every accusation is a confession. That's something that's been in my head a lot lately.
Yeah.
That doesn't pan out the way I thought it would when I first wrote it down. Because Emma's not saying tramp in the sense of she's also someone who gets her way through sexual prowess. Although it's very possible that she is sleeping with MacGyver to keep him sweet. That's very possible, right?
So I would think not, for that point, from what Vienna says about Emma essentially being like more of a nun-esque character. And then that would fall somewhat also in the Western trope where you would have like the saloon girl versus like the teacher. And essentially those are the two poles that we're playing with here. Like
Right.
one's always a chase character, and the chase is usually considered a higher position to be in. That is like the standard stock Western. Here, we flip that, and the saloon woman is in the higher position to be in, and it took that chasteness and turned that into like a vindictiveness about them not being able to express who they are as a character.
Right, exactly, and so that's something that in retrospect I now see is that what Emma's actually doing is like I don't have any other card to play to bring you down to my level, so I'm going to use your sexual agency against you in this moment because she is just frankly mad that Vienna, who owns simply one saloon, somehow has more power than a woman who owns half a town. So it's just jealousy. It's just pure under jealousy because the fact that her brother has been killed is no longer a concern for another 15 fucking minutes of this movie. My brother's been killed, and then they set him on the craps table, and then not only does she ignore him for the rest of the movie, but like we don't see him in shot afterwards. The movie ignores Len, right? No one cares about this guy who got shot during a stagecoach robbery because that's not the point. It was an excuse to get her out of town.
Yeah. And it's because they fear the future wealth and prosperity she's going to have, which goes back to like a larger thing. A lot of Westerns and Western itself dealt with the oncoming approach of technology that would change the lifestyles that people are being accustomed to, and they would fight against it. That's even could go so far to when barbed wire fences, there was like huge land wars about barbed wire fences and not barbed wire fences because people
Mm,
with sheep and everything else would eat the grass that they were trying to use for their cattle, and huge range wars for like decades would rage on over
wow.
these things. And so like that train is a constant fear of the West. It's like why a lot of Westerns are written about the oncoming of the train, because
Right.
it's huge. It changes the entire scope of everything. And
Right.
that's where we go for our futurist point with you had with Vienna, is seeing that happening and ready to ride that wave to success.
Right. Which is again, in retrospect, I now understand a bit better how subversive Briscoe County Jr. was because Briscoe County Jr. was a Western that said, what if we embraced modernity? What if we
Yeah.
embraced technology? And realizing how anti-technology Westerns as a medium really are.
Yeah. God, that was a brilliant show that died way too soon.
Yeah, yeah. Anything else about this chunk?
Well, this is where we get our big piece between also the dancing kids gang and Johnny. For instance, that's when we
Right,
have Bart and Johnny go out, and when they're about to go outside, Vienna says no guns specifically. Like she cuts that off, and you don't know why. She's like, no guns, because you're thinking maybe Bart's going to shoot Johnny. And it's a fist fight, which Johnny wins. He's
right.
like the
Yeah,
best fist fighter around.
it's a little that we'll cut in next section, but you're right. Uh, uh, Johnny does
Oh,
just
you're right. Sorry, I didn't see the next piece. We can
Well,
pause there and
we'll
move
go to
on
the
to
next
that.
piece then we'll talk about it again. Vienna refuses to buckle to the pressure to leave, and Johnny agrees to stay and help her, even though the kid tries to buy him off. Johnny and Bart, one of the kid's goons, get into a fight, and Johnny displays his ability with fists. Turkey, another one of the goons who's a teenager, starts shooting up the saloon to prove he's a man to Vienna. And Johnny, misunderstanding the situation, reveals he's excellent with a gun as he shoots Turkey's gun out of his hand and then across the floor. Vienna is furious at Johnny's reaction, calling him gun crazy. We learn Vienna and Johnny have had 5 years of history, back when he called himself Johnny Logan, and she explains her plans about the town's expansion. So, yes, she's like, yeah, no guns. You say he goes outside and he just beats the snot out of Bart. Um, and very much going, oh, so Johnny is good. And then, of course, with Turkey, where he just literally not only just shoot out of hand, but like he shoots at the force the gun keeps skittering across the floor away from him. It's like straight up gun bullshit, right?
So
Um,
Sergione did a riff on this in the second of the. All right, so officially, I think America labeled them the Dollar Trilogy because technically the Clint Eastwood character is not the same character throughout all three movies. Whole load of thing, but in the second one,
for a few
Sergione
dollars
did
more.
a riff on this by having him shoot the hat like this. He like shot the hat off the
Oh
head
right.
and then shot it, shot it, shot it, shot it. Boom.
Okay. No. Yeah, I remember that scene. Now you're right. Wow. Again, it's all references all the way down, right?
Yeah, love it.
um, and the other thing that's happening is that, from a plot perspective, I had to kind of linearly. But what's actually happening is the kid and Vienna are arguing, and then the movie is cutting to Johnny beating the shit out of Bart. So it's contextualizing the violence of the brawl with the verbal conflict that the kid and Vienna are having, which forces us to consider the violence of what the kid and Vienna are arguing about. Right. So, which raises the mind of like, if Vienna were not a woman, would she also be beating the shit out of the kid right now? But society won't allow her to do that, and so she has Johnny as her proxy to enact the violence that society won't let her do, which is interesting because then that changes, right? But
A side digression now, just for TTRPGs. If you have a TTRPG, verbal combat should be just as engaging and amazing
yep,
as physical combat, because they're both super important. Doubly so in the Western genre, where words are like power, like in and of
right,
themselves.
right.
TTRPG hat off.
But again, to go back to my original comment, this is another moment where it's a little weird because when Bart gets beat, he kind of does the cross-eyed, glassy-eyed wobbling around thing, and then we hear another kind of womp 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 music thing, right? Like, look at how funny he got beat up, which is typical of the kind of broad comedy of the 50s. But again, it's like it's so discordant with what's happening in the movie right now.
But he also kicks Bart in the butt to put him through the door, which is a comic beat in of itself. So
Right.
there's these little
So
things.
yeah. So it's there's a lot of tone switching. Now it's the last time I think that happens. Everything after this is just straight drama, right? Um, uh, but it was a weird. At the time, I was like, that's a weirdly discordant note. In retrospect, I think what's happening is again the movie's trying to undercut the violence, unlike High Noon, where the violence is so shocking. The movie builds and builds and builds and builds until the violence actually happens, and so it feels because as we talked before, like it's not in the middle of the street, it's behind corners and whatnot. People are getting shot in the back, so the violence is supposed to be a shock. In this case, the movie's kind of saying the violence isn't the point. Yes, we're contextualizing it with the conversation with the kid and Vienna, but that's the more important conflict here, actually. I realize that's kind of happening here is that it's not meant to be a comedic, but it's meant to go, yeah, this fight with the Bart doesn't really matter. The fight between the kid and Vienna matters. And turns out
But it's
the movie's
also
correct.
framing the fights in the way that people expect them to be.
Right.
Like, it's not Johnny suddenly decking Bart how he got like in the Oxbow incident where someone suddenly punches each other. We get them saying, we're going to go outside. Well, Vienna sends them outside, but we're going to agree to have a fight. We both start on the same playing field and we execute our fight together. So there's that honor fight thing going on right there.
Right. But it also, in retrospect, kind of ends up having the air of we're supposed to have a fight here. And the movie kind of going, this is the obligatory fight. But that's no, that's not quite right because it is important. We do need to suddenly realize that Johnny is in fact as good as we suspected he was, right? So I mean, I'm not saying it's not extraneous, but it is played in a way that kind of undercuts it and like goes, yeah, this is what you're expecting here, so we're going to give this to you. Gratuitous game, not quite right. It's hard for me to define. A lot of this movie is hard for me to define, frankly.
We need to prove to you, the viewers, that Johnny is in fact the hero that we've told you he's going to be, because we've undercut it to here. But we need to show you that he is physically more than capable before we
Right.
go into the more emotional beats, which are then going to undercut all that physicality that we've given Johnny.
Right, but it also, I think what I'm trying to say is like it's also kind of finger wagging at the audience a bit, going, "This is what you expect, so we're giving it to you, and it's important, but also you really shouldn't be enjoying this as much as you are." I think maybe that's where I'm kind of going for.
I understand what you're saying. I don't think I could see that given all the undercutting they're doing, because they're constantly building up characters and cutting all those characters off. So it's a
Right, right,
constant
right.
like jarring shifts. And you need to reinforce that Johnny is that hero for people to see. Because we had like
Right,
3 or
right.
4 shots of whiskey, and then it's like, I said it's enough. And then we go do what we got to do to prove it's enough.
No, but I mean, and again, like, I completely agree that we need to see, both his fist fighting ability and his gun shooting ability, but both of them are very, again, stagey, right? Like the shooting the gun across the floor thing, it feels very Wild West show trick more than the thing you would actually do in a gunfight. Again, compare the gun violence at this stage of the movie. Again, it gets changes later, but at this stage of the movie, the gun violence is very different from like the end of High Noon, which is very
Yeah.
bloody, visceral, violent. This is just look at how cool things I can do. Pew 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 pew. Look, I can kick this guy in the butt. Isn't that funny? Right. So the violence at this point feels very showy. And as I say it, now I'm realizing Johnny's doing it intentionally. I think that's actually the point here. Because Johnny is, I'm just a guitar person. Okay, I'm a violent guy, but also I'm still just a showman, right? So
Because
maybe that's actually what's happening.
it's showing the internal conflict of the character, which we don't
Right.
know yet. But we will learn shortly that Johnny is a vicious killer that's trying to be more finger quotes civilized
Right.
to prove to
Right.
Vienna that he's changed. So we
Okay.
don't see
Yeah,
that. We don't know that, but we see it on his face even when he takes out the gun and starts shooting the other gun away.
that's a good point actually, because when we see him in the fights, he's extremely serious. But the second someone talks to him, he gets a smile on his face again. No. Okay. I think we talked me into that's what's going on. The movie has to kind of reinforce musically, hey, this is a comedic beat, not from the movie telling you it's a comedy moment, but like we have to kind of emphasize Johnny's playing like a line here. Johnny's playing around because he needs to keep this violence at a goofy level because he's afraid of what's going to happen to him.
Yeah. Oh.
Okay, all right. Also, speaking of Johnny fucking around, after all of this, he picks up his guitar and immediately making a song about how much of an asshole Emma is. I'm just like, wow, you are absolutely the bard, my friend. That's one die
Oh,
4
that's how.
damage you just did.
Oh. So, Eddie, if I was ever in a Western, I would not want my name to be Turkey. That is not the code name I would want hung upon me. I would
Oh,
also
poor
want the
turkey.
Dancing Kid either. That's not a great name either.
Right. Um, Bart's not bad, but everybody else, yeah, no, not so much.
But we also, this is, oh, that's right. This is also where we get the fact where we have Vienna gets to call Johnny gun crazy.
Right.
And that reinforces who that character is for all of us. And that's where we get more of their backstory, right?
Yeah. We find out they've known each other for 5 years. It's not explicitly said they're romantically involved, but it's heavily implied. Um, and so it's interesting because we get this backwards, right? Because the kid, part of the fight between Kid and Vienna is the kid trying to ask Vienna why Johnny's here, but can't actually say that because everybody else is around. So he's doing lots of what are you doing? What are your plans? And she's intentionally, I think, answering the actual hidden question. She's answering the spoken question and intentionally avoiding the hidden question, right?
Yeah.
And then we find out afterwards, oh no, these two actually have 5 years of history, and she's inviting him back. This is not just I hired a random guy off eBay. It's the no, I want Johnny specifically to come back. And so the kid knows Johnny is here for protection, which means they also have a relationship. So a lot of the Barb stuff we saw earlier immediately gets recontextualized as they have a history. And Johnny's trying to get him to shut the fuck up about that history in front of everybody else. And the kid is playing along for some reason with that, even when Johnny's not present. But we don't know why. Again, as you point out later, this is a movie it's hard to describe because so much of it, understanding the movie involves understanding the latest reveal, which is that he's actually a murderer. And so it's like the kid's like, I don't want people to freak out that there are murderers in town because that means everyone's gonna die. It's going to cause a lot of violence that I don't want because I'm the outlaw, but I still care about this town, which is something that we're just getting glimpses of at this point in time.
And so I'm not sure if it's going to come up later or not, but the breakdown in dynamics when we just get Vienna and Johnny and they start going through the relationship beats and everything else.
Right.
Like that in of itself is like gold. where
Yeah.
it goes to, and how it spreads. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just like, there's two of those scenes, and this scene is the one where they're lying to each other about it. The later
Yeah.
scene is when they're honest to each other about it. So this is very much Johnny going, why'd you invite me? Or Vanna's like, I wanted you to play guitar, and he's like, because again, like you said before, she said no guns, and at the moment it was like she played a varmint like, I don't want to get blood in my bar, right? But it turns out from this conversation that we realize she said no guns to Johnny. But you're right. Like there's a complex relationship that at this stage of the movie we only see a glimpse of.
Since I'm not sure if it happens later, I'll mention it later. If you want to
Sure.
go into the next summary, then we can jump into it.
Yeah, let's say for the next conversation, because then we can dig into what their relationship actually is, because it's a lot. All right. So the kid and his gang ride through a waterfall to their hidden lair and start blaming each other for getting accused of the stagecoach killing and for failing to intimidate Vienna. The kid decides they'll move their operation to California, but they can't afford to buy fresh horses to get there, so he decides to do, quote, something that's worth hanging us for, unquote. Late at night, Vienna comes downstairs to see a drunk Johnny, and they both confess they can't sleep. After a brief argument, they admit their feelings for each other. This is where the actual second conversation happens. And next morning, she goes to the bank, which is owned by Emma, to withdraw her savings. Dancing Kid enters, intent on robbing the bank to pay for said horses, and Vienna tries to talk him out of it to no avail. Afterward, Emma believes Vienna came to the bank to assist in the robbery, while Vienna returns to the saloon as the explosions of the train construction get closer.
I will push back slightly on part of your summary.
Okay, which is what?
The Emma believes Vienna came to the bank to assist in the robbery. I, for 1 second, do not think she thinks that. I think that's what she tells people.
Vienna tells people is better. Maybe
Yes,
a better way of describing
I would 100% agree with that statement.
Right. No, that's fair, because it is incredibly clear that Emma is looking for any fucking reason to get that tramp out of town.
No, to literally to kill her, because that's part of like the great scene at the start where you even have Vienna looking down on Emma and essentially saying that one of us is going to kill the other because you won't let shit go.
Right. So to the point you were kind of talking about earlier, I'll just get to the conversation real quick so we can wrap that up. They're both drunk and they both admit that they actually are in love with each other still. So they've always been in love with each other. But the reason why Vienna could be with him is because Johnny's a murderer and won't let it go. And Johnny, at this point, going, I have been trying to let it go, but shit keeps coming up. And so they have what's ultimately the actual debate of the film, which is she says, I just want you to, you're here to protect me and protect my business, because when the train gets here, they'll bring people and my business will boom. And he is saying, you cannot do that without shedding blood.
Yeah.
And her argument is, you don't see any other path because you are gun crazy. And he is saying, you don't see any other path because you live inside this saloon and refuse to see the world as it really exists.
Yeah. And they're both right. And they have to meet in the middle to be successful. And and she's such a powerful character. She doesn't want to meet in the middle. And his obsession with killing people means he can't meet in the middle. So,
right. And for me, that's when it's cemented for me. It's like, no, Vienna is the protagonist of this movie, but also specifically what we're kind of undercutting here is that normally in these kinds of Westerns, Johnny would have the power. And it's like he would literally just bring justice with the force of his guns. And what this movie is saying is like, Johnny, the thing that most Westerns would enact and create justice are the thing that's preventing Johnny from doing that exact thing. His bloodlust is stopping him from protecting the woman that he loves.
Yeah. And we also then get the fact in that dynamic they discuss is she asks, how many people have you killed? And he's like, how many people have you been with? To show like the dynamic of where they're at between each other, which reinforces that Vienna has potentially been in a lot of favors to get what she wants to. And the fact that he can't stop killing people. So it's all there until they finally embrace each other. It shows you there's a possibility of hope in this very bleakish high melodrama movie.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is that the conversation between Johnny and Vienna also gives us context for characters outside of that conversation, right? Like when we find out, when you said, how many people you've been with, and she doesn't engage the question, right? Which answers probably quite a lot. It tells us that Emma's correct in the fact that Vienna got power through sex. And that's probably part of the reason why she's so fucking mad, is because her faith or ideology or whatever won't let her do that.
Prudishness is what I'd like to call it.
Sure, right, whatever. So basically, this woman has sex with people and gets power that she doesn't have, even though on paper she has more power. And so her morals are conflicting with her lust for power. And that's why she's so mad. And that's why Vienna represents everything that Emma hates.
But we
And we
also
get
have
back
the
from the
point
conversation
where,
where Emma's not in, which is interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
but also the point where Emma is bloodthirsty. Like we've
Right,
left any sort of like propriety behind. She just wants blood, is what she wants.
right, right. Um,
And
and the fact
I guess one
that
more
she's willing to
beat
use
for
any
Johnny.
excuse.
Just one more beat for Johnny and Vienna, then we can move on to everybody else. Is that Johnny specifically asked Vienna to lie to him, and then she does.
Yeah.
In very deadpan manner lies to him, telling him specifically what he wants.
Right.
Which in of itself is kind of a fascinating thought, that she's willing to lie, but she's not willing to put any effort into the lie.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing that this conversation kind of cements, which is fascinating, is that at the end of the conversation, Johnny just straight up says, "At the end of the day, you're my employer," which reinforces the power dynamic. Vienna is the one with the power in this movie. So the kid and his gang.
Wait,
Go
wait.
back to them real quick. Oh.
Okay, I thought you were about to read the next summary, because we can't
No,
do
no, no,
that yet.
no,
We got the
no.
bank to do.
No. I'm going backwards now because we jumped in the middle of
Okay.
that. So we're going back. So up to this point, what we've kind of established is that the turkey's a hothead, Bart's also a hothead, and is a little unhappy with something, but we're not quite sure what yet. And the kid is a criminal, but how he fits into the overall structure of town is a bit weird. When they go back to their lair and have a fight, and we have a fairly long conversation between the four of them, we realize things are much more complicated than they appear to be. Bart is very much wants to be in control of the gang, and the kid and everyone else in the gang follows the kid. I forget what the fourth guy's name is. I have it written down here. Cody, I think. Corey. Corey blindly follows the kid, and Turkey just wants to be respected, and so he's willing to back anybody who he thinks will respect him as a man. Bart just straight up wants to be in control of the gang. So it's a fairly traditional enemy dynamic. But what pops up here is that during all of the previous conversation in the saloon, the kids fervently denied being involved with the stagecoach thing, but it was very much pitched in a way of, well, of course you're denying it because you probably did it, right? Here we find out, no, they straight up didn't do it. They did not do the stagecoach robbery.
And
But
they,
they're
in
gonna
fact, do
hang
have some
anyway.
little silver mine somewhere, like tucked away, that's barely making money.
Right. So this lair is it's implied that it's on top of or connected to the silver mine in some way. And it's like, so they're just miners. It really is what happened here. It's like as far as the kids go, he would be happy to stay outside of town and just mine this shitty ass silver mine, but he can't because now they've been dragged into. Bart would love to become a straight up outlaw gang.
Yeah.
And is mad that they're doing more outlaw stuff. And the kid's like, we're doing a bare minimum outlaw stuff just to keep ourselves afloat because we don't have quite enough money from the silver mine. But now, because of Emma, we got to bail, but we can't go to California because our horses won't last. So we have to do even more crime to get out of the crime that we've been accused of.
But the kid is a type of outlaw leader you would want, because the reason they're going to California is because Corey has the cough,
Right.
and they're trying
Right.
to take him somewhere dry.
Right. Right. And Turkey goes along because he just wants to, again, he just wants to be respected. And so it's like, if we go to California, then I can, no one know who I am, and so therefore I can be seen as a badass. And Bart's going along just because it's pretty clear he wants to get access to the money and then probably kill off the kid and take control of the gang.
Yeah.
So what started off as three guys in the backgrounds, two of which got basically clowned by Johnny Guitar, is now a surprisingly complex relationship all of a sudden.
Which is how it should be. Like, they're minor characters should be their own primary characters in their setting. They are minor characters in the Vienna and Johnny story, but here they are the primary characters.
Right. And what's so great about the movie is that none of it feels like it was bolted on or changed at the last minute, right? It's like it's what you find this information out and then you go think about back to previous scenes and go, oh, that was all there. It's just it was done through the lens of broad archetypes. And this movie's going, oh, but this is actually what either you didn't understand what happened there, and so what you thought was broad archetype wasn't, or there's a reason why this person was acting in the venue of a broad archetype. But it's actually we have now 7 characters with complex relationships. So you have the 4 outlaws, Johnny, Vienna, and Emma, and it's like all of them have fairly common. Emma's probably the least developed at this point in the movie, but we're still getting, again, from the later conversation, but like from the Johnny and Vienna conversation, we get more about Emma. But also from this conversation, we very much get the implication that Emma may have staged the stagecoach murder and maybe have her own brother murdered just to have an excuse to get Vienna killed.
Wow. I don't see that. I would like to know that trip. Like, I don't.
Well, because we never, in the course of the movie, find out who actually performed the stagecoach robbery.
Yeah, but I think that's also relevant. That feels a lot like the West, though.
I mean, fair. It's also just as plausible that Emma just took advantage of a situation, right?
Which is how I've read it completely, because that's how she also gets like complete control of the bank because of her brother having it.
Right. But okay,
So
so
things like that.
but regardless, either way, this conversation with the outlaw gang very much implies Emma's ruthlessness,
Yes.
and the kid knows Emma enough to go, no, I see where this is going to go. We're not going to talk her out of it. We got to get the fuck out of town. And if she's going to come after us, we might as well rob her fucking bank.
I totally agree. That's a plan that makes perfect sense too.
Yeah. That's the thing. It makes logical sense given the situation they're in.
Oh. So when Johnny and Vienna ride to the bank,
right,
you can already see the stereotypical feminization now of Vienna, because Vienna went from like pants to wearing a skirt.
Yep.
And they're pretending to be like a happy little couple already, like instantly. It's another facade they're putting on. Kind of how Johnny has a facade of a pacifist.
Right. Yeah. And there's actually an interesting parallel situation because Johnny and Vienna are pretending to be a happy couple and kind of ignoring their inner conflict, while Bart and the kid are pretending to be a gang on the same page. So there's actually parallel arcs happening in both groups at the same time.
Yeah. Oh.
And then the bank. And it just starts off as like, hey, we're a happy couple. I'm going to go to the bank, get some money out, and it'll be fine. But we already know that. But actually, we don't know exactly what the kid's going to do. But then the kid shows up and immediately go, oh, okay, this was the plan. They're going to rob the bank, right?
Did you notice though when Vienna and Johnny showed up, it was very happy. Then when Johnny like sort of goes to tie the horses off, we get a shot of Emma, who's like, the facade drops and we see that she knows something like shit's gonna go sideways already.
Yep.
And then he comes back, she's happy again.
And also, she tells Johnny to stay outside, and he doesn't like that plan. Vienna tells him to stay outside, I should say. And Johnny's like, doesn't seem to be happy with it. But he does it. And then when Turkey shows up, you can tell Johnny's like, shit's gonna go sideways, but I was told to stay outside, so I guess I'm gonna stay outside. And it's all body language. He didn't say a word, but the body language, it is, you could get the vibe of malicious compliance in the whole scene.
Oh, that bank robbery. Oh.
Right.
And we also get another instance, though, that the kid is not a real outlaw. Like everything
No.
we've seen up to now, the fact that Vienna nearly takes his gun away from him, the fact that he stops Bart from shooting Johnny. He doesn't even threaten Johnny, just say, "You're not going to be trouble." And Johnny's like, "Nope." And he says, "Okay."
Right.
All these things constantly reinforce that these are not, well, the kid isn't necessarily a bad guy.
Right. Yeah. And certainly Vienna calls him a kid a couple of times, and he very angrily refutes it. But by his actions, we've seen through all this, like, yeah, he's a teenager. He's a kid. He actually is a kid. So Vienna's not wrong. And then, yeah, the kid comes, sorry, the dancing kid, not Turkey, comes in, and Vienna's like, seriously, this is, you're gonna get hanged if you do this. You could still walk away, and even she's like, basically browbeats the teller into giving false witness, like going, he won't say nothing. And the teller's like, yeah, no, I won't say anything. And it's like, so it shows you how much power Vienna has. It's like, inside a bank she doesn't even own. And of course, like, slightly before that scene, she's like, they're like, what are you doing? It's like, I'm closing why are you closing your account? Because your fucking boss told me to get the hell out of town. Right?
Well, no, she points out that she's closing it specifically because now that her brother is dead, she owns the bank. So while her
Right.
brother was in charge of it, she'd have her money there.
Right. But that's not the official reason she gives. Is MacGyver's told me to get out of town, so I'm doing that. It's been 24 hours, so I'm taking my money so I can go. But you're right. In the midst of that, she gives the actual reason, which is, I don't trust Emma with my fucking money.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
So yeah. I forgot to mention, right before she left for the bank, she spins the roulette wheel again. So we had that motif of the spinning wheel again. And
And we
so
also
that,
have, go ahead.
no, go ahead, finish that.
Mine was going to be inserted at the end where we have Emma comes in and browbeats a teller into saying that Vienna helped the bandits.
Oh, right. Yeah, sorry, my brain went briefly because I was like, I like, there's something else with the bank, but I forgot, so I bounced back to another point. Oh no, I remember where I was gonna go. The reason why I mentioned the spinning wheel is because what the movie's now doing is starting to set up the idea of repeating motifs, which is that we have the visual motif of the spinning wheel, which is indicative of Vienna's control. Right, every time Vienna feels like she's in control or feels like she might be slipping control, she spins the wheel to kind of show, this is my place, my area. I have control over this. And Emma, whenever she feels like she's losing control, she needs to be in control, she yells at a man until he gives in to her demands. Right? She did it with MacGyver's, she did it with the marshal, now she's doing it with the teller. And so we see two women who are manifesting their respective power in very different ways. Vienna's is much more subtle control, much more about inviting people to join with her and to collaborate with her by coming into the saloon and playing her games. Emma's much more about wielding her power like a fist and basically demanding people do things the way she wants to. And to your point, right, this is where she's like, she says, well, obviously Vienna was collaborating with him, and of course, Teller's like, I don't think that's what happened. No, that's what was happening. Yeah, man, you pay my bills. That's totally what happened.
Yeah. Which then you're curious how, if trying to think about like the 50s, the point in time, because one of the things was it could be talking about McCarthyism also into the movie itself.
True. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. But you're right. People in power browbeating people into seeing things that they didn't actually see. which
Yeah.
is very much a McCarthyism thing. So yeah, so at this point in the movie, it is like, and again, sorry, this point of the movie, it's increasingly clear that Emma will use any excuse to try to go after Vienna. It is just about Emma and Vienna. And Vienna knows this and has probably always known this. Vienna feels the importance to go through the motions so that she is clear. But to her point, the line she says, that I quoted at the beginning of the episode, somebody says to Johnny, of like, she kind of has to because she is a woman. Because Emma gets to throw around, she throws around tramp a third time here, actually. Because Emma keeps holding her sexual agency against her as a negative. Vienna's got to be absolutely perfect in all of her actions in order to get any kind of sense of support or justice. And at this point in the movie, we're seeing even that doesn't matter, right? Emma will just straight up manipulate the truth to get people to see things her way.
And we also, Vienna has already stated that what, like that saloon that everyone sees, didn't just happen. She built that from like nothing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anything else about the bank scene?
Nah, we're there for a while.
Okay. Dancing Kids and his men realize that the blasting has made it impossible to get through the pass and therefore leave the town, and decide to hide out back at their lair, which is a cabin in the mountains. Turkey, who is injured, falls behind, and although the kid offers to go back for him, the rest of the gang convince him to continue on to the lair, leaving him behind. Emma and MacGyvers and a posse try to locate the kid and his gang, but to no avail. Emma pushes them to go to Vienna's place, intent on lynching somebody for Len's murder and the bank robbery. Meanwhile, Turkey staggers through the doors of the saloon just as the posse arrives. So we'll get to the confronting Vienna and Turkey in a moment. This is everything leading up to that moment, because that's a whole that one scene's a whole thing to unpack. But the blasting that we saw earlier now is pretty much closer. So the sign of progress, the blasting in the mountains to build the railroad, has also trapped everyone inside, which is very clearly a metaphor, right? Technology that will free you also imprisons you.
We also get the fact that Bart then gets to say that if we followed my plan, we would have been safe because they were supposed to, he wanted to go across the desert, which wouldn't have involved the blasting.
Right.
So more of that
And
leadership conflict.
And again, another parallel of both are technically correct.
How very Megatron and Starscream of them.
Yes, right? Like, if they had gone across the desert, they would have lost Corey. And that was the kid was against. But because of the kid's plan, now they've lost Turkey.
Yeah.
And from Bart's perspective, losing Corey would have been no great loss because Corey was a kid loyalist. And from the kid's perspective, he's upset that Turkey's left behind, but at the end of the day, he gets convinced because Turkey probably would have sided with Bart in a conflict at this point.
See, I read it more as if he begrudgingly went along because Corey was a voice of reason for him, and there was a chance that that Turkey
Yes.
could have made it.
Yes.
So
Let me rephrase that. I'm not saying that that was top of his mind. It's more from purely from a dynamic standpoint, right? Like how things shook out.
yeah,
But you're right. The main reason he left behind, because he wanted to go back. Bart says no. He doesn't listen to Bart because fuck Bart. But Corey's like, no. If we go back, more of us will get lost. We need to get to the lair, and he knows where lair is. We'll meet him. He'll meet us up there if he can get there. But if he's dead, there's nothing we can do about it anyway, right? And so Corey's like trying to be rational about it. And that's when the kid finally acquiesces, which plays into Bart's ultimate plans, right?
yeah. But I was also, I think, in a different version of the movie, the kid would have started going off, and then Bart would have shot him in the back.
Right. Which is kind of what I thought was going to happen for a minute there. It's like, oh, if the kid's actually a decent guy, he'll go after Turkey, and then Bart's going to kill him. Turns out that did kind of happen, but not in the way I expected.
Subverting.
Right. And this is where we have the conversation of Vienna saying, "I hired you for protection," and him saying, he has to kill a protector. So we have that moral debate. But also, the one thing I found, again, really fascinating is, so she went to the bank, she got her money out. She goes back to the saloon. The first thing she does is pay off all of her employees
Yep.
and say, "Here's money. Get the hell out of town. If you come back here and I'm doing good, you got your jobs back. If not, then you got money to live on for a while."
Much like the owner of the saloon in High Noon.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Her
Right.
first thing she did and got her money, paid her people.
Right. Whereas, and so now we have the most direct conflict between Emma and Vienna in terms of their power, is because Vienna realizes her power comes from her people, and she treats them well. Even Johnny, even though they're fighting at this point, she still treats him well, even though she treats him well in the sense of trying to get him to be a better person. Whereas Emma uses all the people under her as tools to get what her ultimate goal is. And for all of the acting and writing and spoken complexity this movie has, it kept surprising me with striking visual images because it's
Yeah.
not constant. And one of it is that because everyone in Emma's posse, they're all at Len's funeral, and then she gets everyone together to go after the gang after the bank robbery. So what ends up happening is you have a whole bunch of people in black chasing after the people in the movie we care about, which is an intensely ominous image.
Agreed. And you also get the fact that Emma wants to immediately go after Vienna, but then you have, I think it's MacGyver's that says you can't do that. You need to get the
Right.
posse more riled up and hungry before they kill someone.
Yeah, and the marshal is at this point in time very mildly kind of going.
Uh-oh.
Well, he's going like, the kid is the one who did the robbery. You gotta go after the obvious suspect first. Only you're the only person who says that Vienna is engaged with it. But like, but what happens is fascinating is that she's like, okay, we'll play along with this. They can't find the kid because, of course, their lair is a secret. And so she keeps going, well, we can go see Vienna. We know where Vienna's at. And so, like, she's not even wearing him down. It's just he's kind of going through the motions until he has enough excuse to go along with Emma's plan. So the whole hunting down the gang really has the vibe of due diligence, which is interesting.
Yeah. Bobs.
Okay, can we get to the next scene?
Oh yeah.
That's
Yeah.
last
This
episode.
is like the scene.
So the scene. The posse storms through the swinging doors of the saloon, demanding the kid, his gang, and Vienna. She tries to claim innocence until they discover Turkey, who's been hiding in the saloon. Emma browbeats him into claiming Vienna was involved. The marshal tries to stop this, but Tom, one of Vienna's employees, tries to stop the marshal. One of the posse shoots Tom, who then accidentally shoots the marshal. With no one left to stop them, the posse take Vienna and Turkey away, and Emma shoots down the chandelier to set the saloon on fire. So I intentionally glossed over the intense power move of them walking into a saloon to Vienna, playing the piano, and saying, "What the fuck are you doing in my house?"
Playing the piano, dressed in an all-white dress to contrast
Yes.
their all-black funeral garb, which you knew
Yes.
they would be in.
Yes. It was just masterful social manipulation. Because she straight up says, like, we're closed. You told me to close, so I've closed. So you're in my house. So why are you in my house when I'm closed, which is the thing you told me to do?
Oh, I love it. I love it so much. And it
And then
is, it's
MacGyver's
a
had the
beautiful
fucking balls to
plan.
be like, why weren't you at the funeral? And she's like, I wasn't invited. You know? You thought I killed him.
Oh, and it's such a
And
beautiful
again,
plan. Like the balls that it takes to pull it off too.
right.
Oh,
Because, like, and it's such a great contrast because, again, the last conversation she had with Johnny's not straight up saying I need to murder them all, but kind of heavily implying we should just murder them all, right? Um, he's genuinely conflicted. Like his instincts are, I should just shoot them all, and that's what I want to do to protect you. And she's like, that will not solve this problem. Let me fucking do this. And so Johnny's heightened emotion, which to be fair, we've not seen much of in the movie, but it's slowly been building. She's actually been getting cooler and cooler, with the exception of her private conversations with John. That's the only time we see a lot of emotion from Vienna. And so she's icy through this whole scene. Like, she knows they're probably going to just grab her and string her up. And she's just like, I'm on my home turf. Like you said, I get in the right dress, I can get on the piano. And then right before the plan starts, Turkey fucking shows up. And she's like, fuck, this kid. This kid's a pain in my ass. But of course, she's like, she's not going to. Part of the reason why she's been so hard on him is because she does not want him to die. She's worried what's going to happen to him. And he's bleeding from his throat. He's just blood all over his hands. And so she's like, Tom, go hide him. And so she still just rolls with it. And she's like, where's Turkey? She's like, I don't know. And she just straight up lies, And what's interesting is, like,
almost worked.
Yeah, but what's interesting is I did not realize until I was watching the movie, or when I was thinking back on the movie, I don't think she's actually lied until this part of the movie. She's misrepresented the truth. She has not answered questions, but I don't think she's ever actually straight up lied until this part of the movie.
I think you're right. I can't remember a specific instance.
Right, because there's plenty of times where, like, Johnny's like, you still love me, and she's just like kind of dodges the question. There's been plenty of times where, like, again, why were you at the bank? Well, I was doing the thing you told me to do, right? There are other reasons for the things she's done plenty of times, but she always had another layer that she could fall back on to avoid lying. But when they say, where's Turkey? She's like, I don't know. She's just lying now. And again, she almost gets away with it. Whereas Emma has done nothing but lie through the whole movie.
And that's when we get, though, they berate Turkey and say that if you tell us that she did it, she was into it, we will let you go, is at the end of the line that he gives. And Turkey looks at her and say, what should I do? And she tells him to save himself.
Yeah.
Knowing
and he
that's
still
going to damn
almost
her to
doesn't
hang.
do it. Yeah. And he almost doesn't do it too, right?
Yeah. And it still doesn't matter, because at that point, they were going to still hang them both.
Yeah. And that's the other thing. It's like, the marshal says, remember this right, the marshal says, if you tell us that she did it, you won't hang.
Now,
and then when was it McIver's?
Yes, the marshal specifically says, you can't tell him that. That's not true.
Oh,
the
you're
marshal
right.
is trying to reinforce what the truth is, and they keep lying more and more and more. But the marshal is very weak and timid. He's like, come on, man, don't do that. That's not accurate.
Hey, that's not cool. You're right. Because I knew when the marshal died, that gave them a loophole. But the loophole was just, the marshal can't be here to tell us we can't lie to you. And so at this point, they're still saying, "Oh no, we'll let you go. We just need you to go with us." And then they're gonna fucking hang him. We'll find it in a minute. They're actually gonna plan to hang him.
That's where we get Tom, the most loyal of loyal sidekicks. Emma put points into Tom when she built her character. Vienna put points into Tom when she built her character sheet.
Yeah, she built her contact. Yep.
Tom didn't leave, and the only reason the marshal dies is because Emma shoots Tom.
And again, this movie surprises me because at this point in time, we're about 3/4 of the way through the movie. So from a normal movie standpoint, we should have met all the characters that are worth knowing, right? And so I didn't even know the guy's name was, his name was given as Tom several times in the movie, but I did not know he mattered until this part of the movie, right?
Yeah.
He was just one of the 3 employees. But in retrospect, Tom was the guy in the kitchen. Tom was the guy who was feeding Johnny. Tom was instrumental in many scenes of the movie, but in a very innocuous way. He was the one who talked briefly to the camera at one point. That was Tom. Yep.
He's also the one that said, hey, you're a good-looking fella, all that stuff too.
Right. So when Tom comes back, from a movie perspective, it's a huge shift. One of the employees came back, and he's going to stay with Vienna and help her. But Vienna does not. Vienna acts almost like she kind of expected this. And when I was in the moment, I was like, "That's weird. That feels unearned." But then I started thinking, no, it was extremely earned. It's just I, as the movie viewer, fell into the tropes of these guys don't matter because they're just the nameless, faceless guys in the background, just set
Yeah.
up as props for things. No, he actually mattered the whole time, much like every other character in this movie. So the movie never, at one point in time, lied to me. It was like, you're going to see these characters and we're going to show you more about them. It's just that this one was a much longer reveal than everybody else. You thought you knew everything, but you didn't quite know everything. You didn't know about Tom.
And then the movie even goes out of its way to tell you that, because he says, this is the first time I've ever felt seen, right before he
Yeah.
dies.
Yes. Yes. It's like literally telling the audience, by the way, you see me now? I had to die if you fucking pay attention to me. Right? Yeah.
That is the most Lynchian thing I've seen in ages, right there.
Short of just looking into the camera and saying it. Yeah, you're right.
Oh, love it.
And more importantly, by killing Tom. So, from a plot perspective, it is the death of the marshal that allows the posse to get emboldened to actually grab Vienna. But from a movie standpoint, from a thematic standpoint, it's Tom's death, her last protector dying, that allows them to do this. Because Johnny is nowhere around at this point in time, and Tom is her last defender. And now that he dies, they feel safe enough to actually take her. And Vienna, for the first time, feels genuine threat for the first time. She's like, all the men she had built around her to protect her are gone. And so she looks, for the first time, genuinely scared.
Yeah. The sheer brass of then Emma burning down her establishment.
It is
Like to
so fucking
put the
petty.
capstone on it. Like, boom, dead.
Right. It's like, oh yeah, and I'm gonna burn your place down. Because nah, like, of all of the movies we've seen so far, I think Emma's probably the worst villain, right? Because she cannot let it go. Not at all. It's like, you've won. You have everything. All the cards went the way you wanted to. You're getting what you want to, and you cannot help yourself.
And that like maniacal glee in her eyes watching it
Yeah.
burn. Oh.
She's not even, and again, like a small moment of like, she shoots the chandelier down. So like, she's a good gunslinger, which is an important plot point that we need to know for a future scene. But in that moment, she's just really good with guns. It's like another woman gunslinger. The movie just almost throws the thought away of like, oh, by the way, both these women are actually really good at gunfighting. By the way.
But she's also super subtle, because if you weren't paying attention, she's the one that quickly draws and shoots Tom.
Yep.
That forces him to actually shoot him. Then to shoot the string. Oh.
Right. And I said like one of the posse shoots Tom because I actually didn't know until you mentioned it. I had forgotten it was Emma that actually did the shooting. That's how the film gets, because it's just a bunch of black figures with their backs to the camera, and then we see someone shoot Tom. Like, we see a puff of smoke, weird gang, a puff of smoke, and he falls over when his gun goes off. So like, it's not exactly clear that Emma did it, but again, like, you're right. Like, where it was situated probably was Emma, and then we see her do this. Like, it definitely was Emma. She knew exactly who she was shooting for. Again, the movie's telling us a lot, but not explicitly saying it.
There is a brief shot of her with gun in hand.
Okay, I think I may have
Tom.
missed that then.
It's like it keeps moving.
Right.
Oh,
again,
evil.
Movie's very confident. Do we need to go to the? Let's ready for the last chunk of the movie.
Yeah, let's wrap this up.
Okay. So the posse take Vienna and Turkey to a bridge, and they hang Turkey, violating the promise they made him. They then put a noose around Vienna's neck and prepare to hang her. Suddenly, Johnny sneaks onto the bridge, cuts the rope, and rescues Vienna. They hide out in the basement of the burning saloon as the posse rides past. Realizing the posse know about the mine shaft under the saloon, the two sneak back out and discover Turkey's horse the next morning, realizing they found the kid's hidden lair. Once there, Johnny and the kid clash, and Johnny Guitar reveals he's really the infamous gunfighter Johnny Logan. Emma and the posse find Turkey's tied up horse and letting it go, follow it to the lair. Bart sells out the gang and lets Emma in before killing Corey and nearly killing the kid. Johnny stops the assassination attempt and he and the kid shoot Bart dead. The time has come for Emma and Vienna to settle their long-standing feud. As the posse pin down Johnny and the kid, Emma climbs up to the cabin. A shootout occurs and Vienna collapses. The kid tries to intervene and Emma shoots him between the eyes. Vienna recovers, having only been shot in the arm, and manages to shoot Emma dead. The posse is stunned and Johnny leads Vienna away. And they kiss. End of movie.
Smoochy, smoochy. Yes,
Right.
end of movie.
So this is actually a long part of the movie, but really what's happening here is just we're finally wrapping up all the threads we put in. Everything is now finally in play, and now we're just playing for the consequences. And the movie does take a while to do it. It does try to hold off the actual resolution as long as possible, which is interesting. This movie was by far the longest one we've watched so far.
It was so long. I would think this movie needs to be 10 minutes shorter. I don't know where those 10 minutes would come from, but when we hit this point, that's when I felt it. It's like
yeah. I get what the movie. I get what the movie's trying to do, right? It's trying to a lot of the movie has been delayed expectations. So it's trying to defer, put off what you want to see, and so it makes logical sense that they're gonna pad this out to try to make you wait for the inevitable gunfight. But I agree with you. This from a modern viewing perspective, this is the part where everything at this point I was like, go 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 go. This is fast. Not fast, but like it was correctly paced, I should say. And at this point in time, it's like, can we just get to the fucking gunfight? I know what needs to happen now. Can we just get there?
And I do love the fact that we had Vienna in the white dress and everything else. And once
Right.
shit gets real, she realizes how utterly pointless all that shit is, and she goes back to like her action wear.
Right.
So that's a distinctive choice for her to say that role that society is trying to place on me that I use to trick them is a mistake. This is a real me, and this is who I need to be.
Right. She tries to use femininity as a weapon, realizes that ultimately that is not going to help her. So she says, "I'm going to be who I am." Right before that, though, it was interesting to see yet another example of a posse lynch mob, and the lynch mob who were so desperate for blood throughout most of the movie, failing to actually execute on the execution until Emma basically browbeats them and actually literally tries to buy people. Say, I'll pay you $100 if someone would kill this woman. And no one will do it.
It goes back to even the Oxbow incident with the fake colonel who couldn't do it himself. He had to get other people to do it.
Right. Exactly. It's an interesting thread of frontier justice thread, but also how people say they want to do this, but when they actually have a chance to get their hands dirty, don't want to get involved. And it's interesting how multiple movies have picked up on this now.
Yeah.
So, as I've been talking a lot and giving a lot of praise for how well structured and tight this movie is, how they get from we escaped. We had a secret passage that was never mentioned under the saloon, change of clothes, then leave that, stumble across Turkey's horse, and use that to deduce where the lair is. Super fucking ropey.
If it worked in Briscoe County, it can work here. Comet could find Briscoe all the time.
Unless things like this may have been an error of horse acquisition or something, but like they literally stumble across the horse and Vienna goes, "That's Turkey's horse," and it's like it looks identical to every other horse we've seen in this movie. There's no distinguishing feature. It's just a brown fucking horse. And she's like, "That's Turkey's horse," and that means right over there is the waterfall we have to walk through to get to the lair. I'm like, the only thing I excuse her from is like she does know the kids, so maybe it was a case of I don't know which waterfall it was. Oh, there's the horse. Okay, it must be this one, but it still feels very contrived.
I let that go. I'm more than happy to let that go. I agree, it's contrived, but at this point, I was kind of like, let's get there.
Fair, fair. Um,
And the dynamic inside the cabin is interesting, but it just highlights what we've already seen throughout the movie. So that's why I'm starting to like feel the pacing right now, like between the
sure.
kid, Vienna, and Johnny.
So this is a place where I'm wondering if it's how much of the movie is aged, because like we're in 2025 so used to, well, at least people like you and I are used to watching a movie and putting things together for ourselves. I wonder if this is just a case of at some point in time we need to explain to the audience what actually happened, and that's what this
Yeah,
scene's doing. Whereas for us, we're going, we already know this stuff, so this is unnecessary because you've already told this stuff without saying it. Now you're just saying the quiet parts out loud. But I wonder if a 1950 something audience needed to hear that.
true. Good call out.
Uh, but I agree. Watching it, it was just like, come on, yes, we know, yes, I'm secretly. We know you're Johnny Logan. We know, buddy. We know your secret is terrible. Your guitar playing is good, but your secret is terrible. Um, and then or Vienna like going, I'm secretly in love. Yes, we know you're in love with him. Get it. Um, but even then, like it's. But one thing that's interesting is like Bart betraying Corey, not a surprise. The movie's been leading
Yeah,
up to that, right? So that what is mildly interesting is when the two plots do actually converge, is where Emma shows up and Bart straight up lets them in.
yep,
And so it's like, okay, what seems like a very casual scene is actually two people realizing our goals are aligned. Killing Vienna and the kids will make both of our lives much easier. And it's completely unspoken, but because we've been watching the movie so long, we understand what's actually happening. It doesn't feel that point where it could feel contrived is actually not. It's completely earned.
yeah.
They just two completely different dynamics have intersected now, and they just happen to align very conveniently. So yeah, I liked that part of it, and so like the movie was still surprising me and trying to inject some twists isn't the right word, but like here's some connections you didn't quite expect to actually happen. Um, and then again, I was a little surprised where the movie went because big shootout happens, and Johnny and the kids, after they deal with their Bart problem, basically more or less the posse, all the men just shoot each other, and they become
Yeah.
very quickly just background, like literally. The big shootout is just a framing device for focusing on Emma as she climbing up the building or climbing towards the cabin.
And she doesn't climb up quietly. She says, "I'm coming for you."
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
And Vienna's just standing there like, come get some. She's like, I'm ready for you. And they're both strapped. They're both got guns. They're ready to dethrone. It's like, I knew this was ultimately a gunfight between these two was inevitable. The whole movie is building up to this. I didn't expect the movie to really sell that point. I expected the men to
yeah,
somehow be involved because, again, 1952 movie, I'm like, the men are somehow going to snatch this from them and make it about themselves, and they
nope.
didn't.
They just watched it happen,
Right?
and it's great. And you even have like the full strip, so they're not like out in the middle of the street, but they're on like a porch, and you have like Emma sneaking around, and Vienna literally stands out in the open so they can have a real like old west just shootout. Whoever's quicker.
Yeah, and again, like
Emma's
a couple
faster.
times, the kid and Johnny try to like get involved, but then as they poke their head up, a shot from the posse comes up. So like it's logical. It's like no, the posse has you pinned down. You can't get out from there. So all they can do is try to keep the posse from interfering and helping Emma in that fight. Um, and then when Emma shoots Vienna, uh, and the kid's like, I'm gonna deal with this, and then she just straight up fucking shoots, like not even subtle, like a bullet hole appears in his head, he falls over. It's the most violent part of the movie. She
Graphic.
unobjectively, un completely murders the kid with one shot.
In the head, like no quibbles, no
Yeah,
quabbles, nothing, just bam.
no, he is done. And I was just like, this movie is absolutely going to completely sell how impressive both Emma and Vienna are.
And then you actually get to have Vienna killing Emma after she's already been shot,
Yeah,
because Emma's coming over to like either finish the job or gloat, and that's when she gets killed.
right.
The person with the most kills in this movie is Emma.
Yeah,
And Vienna, I said Emma's faster, but Vienna comes out and doesn't shoot. Like, he keeps trying not to kill her,
right.
much to her own detriment.
Right, because the other part of the movie that, again, is not stated, she's been telling Johnny he can't kill anybody. He's gone crazy. At this point, the last 5 minutes of the goddamn movie, we realized she was talking about herself. She was worried about her ability to murder someone. And Johnny was just a proxy for her own anxieties about killing someone. Johnny Guitar.
But Eddie, it's like every other Western, because at the end, they kiss, so they're going to have a happy ever after together.
Wow. So that's Johnny Guitar.
What are your final thoughts? This is a film Eddie's never seen. Eddie has thoughts. We've talked about many of them. What are the last few together
So
compiled
part of the
after
reason why I've
that?
been holding back my opinion of the movie is because when I sat down to record this with you, I genuinely wasn't sure what I thought, right? Like, I enjoyed watching the movie. Absolutely. 100%. Like, and to be honest, again, I continue to be surprised by this. Every movie we've watched so far, you've picked amazing movies because I've enjoyed watching every single one of them. There's not been a single movie I've been like, oh my God, why am I watching this? Last 50 minutes of this movie, I was getting a bit like, okay, maybe not. Um, but like, it's so hard to categorize this film. It's so hard to. I can see why American audiences maybe didn't jive with this because it's like, what box do I put this in? You know? And you asked me at the very start of this, like, is this noir? And I pushed against that. Now that we talked it through, I'm a little more inclined to say it is. Um,
But
because now
still,
that
it's not
we've
completely.
right, it's not. I think the problem is that a lot of noir is externalized. Um, you have to make hard decisions about external threats and navigate your way through that. And those external threats can be other people and lies and manipulations, but they're ultimately external to you. A lot of this movie is trying very hard in a way that's really hard to do in 1950, whatever, 54, 52,
Stage
um,
four.
of showing internal conflict. And the way it chooses to talk about Vienna's internal conflict is to manifest Johnny Guitar. Johnny Guitar is basically Vienna's internal conflict, but he's also separately actually a character. And again, like just the sheer balls of calling this movie Johnny Guitar, right? Because it from the title card, the movie's like, we're gonna fuck with you. The whole movie, we're just gonna fuck with you. Just to be clear, the title's Johnny Guitar. Spoiler: it's not about Johnny Guitar. And once you realize that, the movie keeps going. Yeah, but you thought you knew what this movie. Guess what? It's not about that anymore.
Well, you can't call it Vienna the saloon owner. That's not going to bring him in.
Right, and like how much of this movie is got changed or adjusted because they needed to do things that would appeal to the audience at the time and then end up being subversive. How much of it was planned from the beginning? How much of it changed in editing? I don't know. But the end result is it's so weird. Not in a lynching way, although you did point out there are some lynching moments, right? There's some
Yeah,
genuinely we're messing with the media moments that are happening here. So it's definitely part of it is there. Um,
I would
but
like to
it's
envision that it didn't change that much just because of Joan Crawford own like the book rights for it, there must have been something in it that drew her to it, and whoever she was to acquire it.
Right, and that's another piece that's about this movie. It's fascinating, is like, because it is a Joan Crawford vehicle. This is not a movie that men put together that a woman got hired to lead. This is a movie that a woman put together. She put herself in as the lead. So of course Joan Crawford's going to be the center of the movie because it's her movie. So like, that's not in debate. That's not a debatable point. So it's, by that nature, even if it wasn't explicitly feminist, it's going to have a feminist bent, considering a movie made in 1954 by Joan Crawford is going to inherently have that compared to other movies at the time, right?
Yeah.
But again, it's more than that. There's, I don't feel a lot of it is intentional. I feel like they wanted to tell a story and then they had to hide some of it because of the time period. And so it ends up being more nuanced as a result because they're kind of hiding some things. I'm still not entirely getting the lesbian subtext, I don't think. Um,
That's one of the interpretations I read. I don't know specifically, so I can't speak to it.
sure.
My thing would be, it could be because of the tension between the two characters, and they can't express it any other way other than through like the violence of their association.
Right.
And part of it is, so we know that she says that she loves Johnny, and that Emma had a thing for the dancing kid, none of which
Right.
is ever fully displayed. And her affection for Johnny, when she tells him things, a lot of it's flatly delivered. So that could probably be part of the reading. I think there's probably some coded words that in current day we do not have enough association with as we would if we were in the 50s.
Right. Okay.
That's me
Um,
extrapolating from stuff I've read and taking some
sure.
guesses.
And like, I could certainly see a case of, right, where it says like maybe that was something in the original novel, or something that maybe was an original draft of the script that they kind of get excised away, and to the point where it's so sub rosa that only if you know, are a friend of Dorothy or whatever would you actually even see that, you know. So it may be so subtextual that it's hard to discern. Totally possible.
But also, as two
Um,
dudes, we just may be missing the absolute obvious.
right. Right. Um, but I will say that one thing that is very clear is the movie is absolutely about how women are forced to co-opt male power authority structures for their own use, because male authorities will not give them that power otherwise, and how that when you discard that those trappings of male authority, uh, you can actually get much further along, because at the end the men are literally backgrounds.
Yeah, I think that's a great synopsis of it. Um, me, this is, I think it's the third time I've seen this movie. I really enjoy this movie. I would recommend it to people, but you won't hear me say that I love this movie, because
Right.
I keep myself trying to figure out exactly how I would describe it to other people if I wanted to recommend it to them. And I
Yeah.
can't quite come up with something I think that does the movie justice. And that's not the movie. That's me needing probably to watch it more to be able to do that.
You know, now that we talked it through, and this is going to sound really crazy, the movie that's currently reminds me a bit of is Sinners, in the sense that any description of the movie you would give would ultimately ruin the actual experience of watching the movie.
Hmm. I see that.
Because I've seen so many people go, "Oh, everyone talked about Sinners, and I thought it was a great vampire movie, and I watched it, and it wasn't a great vampire movie." It's like, no, Sinners is a terrible vampire movie. It's not a vampire movie. It's a movie that has vampires in it, right? If you said this is a movie about a female gunslinger, that would be a terrible explanation of this movie, even though it's accurate, you know?
Because technically they're not gunslingers, Eddie. They can
Right.
use guns super well, like crazy accurate, but they're not gunslingers.
Right. Yeah. It's the, is it a romance story? Technically. Is it a story about frontier justice? Kind of. Right. So, like, any label you put on it uh, ruins another part of the movie, or sets you up for expectations that are not going to be met by the movie as presented. That's why I thought of Sinners, because like Sinners is really a movie you can only really, I think, truly appreciate if you go in not knowing what the movie's going to be, except for it's a horror film.
Yeah. And some people call it a melodrama. Yeah.
Yeah, it
but
is melodramatic.
there's so much more to it than that though. So it's yeah,
It is
good movie,
positively
good movie.
Shakespearean in that regard.
So I guess we should really tell people we're going to cover next time that. Okay, I'll tell you the story behind the scenes for this one. Originally, I had something else put, but I had it more as a slot holder because I wasn't 100% sure because I was debating another movie and I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it because at the start of it, I said we're going to try to avoid doing movies by the same director more than once.
Right.
That was something I had in mind. But as we're continuing to go through the run and I'm in it now, I could not have us cover Sergeant Rutledge by John Ford, 1960.
Right.
So I switched
So,
out the other 1960 movie for this 1960 movie. I'm not going to tell you what their movie is. You have to wait. We may eventually cover it someday.
right.
So next
And,
time, Sergeant Rutledge.
right. And as a note, Chris said that this was a placeholder. I didn't know that, so I was surprised to find out a couple days ago that we're switching a movie. But to Chris's point, like there's another reason why I'm going to cover the movie that was going to be in that slot for other reasons down the road. So we probably will get to it.
And another big thing is I have seen Sergeant Rutledge once, decades ago.
Okay.
So we're both going in with unknown expectations. I don't think Eddie's ever seen it. I saw it
No,
once
God, no.
decades ago. But part of it is going to be John Ford addressing racism. So let's see how that's going to work out.
I'm sure that'll go well. And also, John Ford, 25 years after the last John Ford movie we've seen. So it could definitely be a director who's made a lot of strides since then.
Eddie, if people want to support you for doing our podcast, where can they do that?
You can go to pugsteady.com. That's my website. That's where you find me on Blue Sky. You can also support my amazing, awesome dog game called Realms of Pugmire. That's at realmsofpugmire.com. How about you?
You can go to my website, darkviewstudios.com. You can buy one of the scant few copies remaining of Haunted West physically or get a
Yeah,
digital version. Or you can just go buy anything by Arc Dream and tell them I sent you there.
indeed. With that, we will see you next time with Sergeant Rutledge. Rutledge, 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 Rutledge.